What up, everybody? It's your boy Hyrule Hystorian here once again with another video. If you're joining me today, make sure you hit like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, yada yada. You already know the drill. But yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody's had enough time to see that new trailer for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel. And boy oh boy, yeah, there's a whole lot to dissect there. But today's video, we're gonna get a little more specific. And the specific thing we're going to look at today is more so, which Ganondorf could this possibly be? Being that there should be no Ganondorf whatsoever in either timeline at this point. So with that being said, without further ado, let's get into it.
Hey, listen.
Perfect.
Okay guys, so we're here, and it's time to discuss the man of the hour. And you know who we're talking about. My man needs no introduction, but he's gonna get one anyway. We're here to talk about none other than you. Yeah, that's right. Demon King, Dark Lord, heir to the Gerudo people, son of Twin Rover himself, the man of the desert, king of thieves. That's right, Ganondorf Dragmire. Yup, the man, the myth, the legend. You know it. But before we can talk about him, we need to back it up a little bit and give a little brief history on Ganondorf himself. So Ganondorf first appears in Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. You first see him when you go to the little garden to speak to Princess Zelda, and you both watch him pledge his allegiance to the King of Hyrule. We remember how that went. Then he tricks Link into going to this the doors of the Sacred Realm, goes in there, tries to grab the Triforce, doesn't end up getting the whole thing. He only ends up with the Triforce of Power. The other two pieces go to Link and Zelda, and after that, Link goes to sleep. And in those next 7 years, my man takes it upon himself to use this Triforce in the weirdest ways. I'm talking dilapidated housing, whole lot of gentrification, a rise in the homeless population, a raise in taxes, I'm sure. My man was like, oh, you like water? Okay, ice.
Ice! What's wrong with him?
Oh, I heard you like rocks. Dragon. Like, my man was doing the most. Took his Triforce of Power and just turned into a politician. Like, honestly, it's kind of remarkable. But still, it's not like my man did for 7 years, was doing everything. He changed Hyrule Boulevard to Martin Luther King.
Watch out!
Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, he killed a tree. Let's not forget he killed a tree. Alright, this is the kind of psycho my man turned once he got his Triforce of Power. Okay? Eventually, he actually gets stopped, but he ends up with 3 fates. And this is the reason why his appearance in Breath of the Wild is the most confusing. See, because at the end, he either lost to Link, or he just triumphant, or beat him, whatever word that sounds cooler. When he does lose to Link, 2 things come from that, because Zelda decides to do the most with her Triforce piece and send people back in time like we might not need them. But whatever, she was just doing what she thought. But you beat him, she sends Link back in time, and you know the rest, since there was no Link around because she sent them back. Ganon comes back, or Ganondorf rather comes back and does the same thing again. But this time, he lets the rape zombies run unchecked. Alright, he just has them screaming at women all day. Doesn't even matter, women or men. My man just had rape ghosts just yelling at you and just taking advantage of you right there by the fountain. Doesn't even care if it was broad day. Like, at this point, you'd have to understand why the gods had to step in. Like, if you were omnipotent, look down at what you last created because it's been a while, and you're like, whoa, rape zombies. All right, we might have to flood this and start over. Like, you feel me? So that's what happened. But Ganondorf in Ganondorf fashion can never be sealed away or whatever you think you got. He's coming back. So he comes back. And this time, he's snatching little girls. Like, yo, Hyrule needs cops. Like, side note, Hyrule needs police protection. Because everything that's happening in the streets is nuts. But either way, in Wind Waker, he comes back, and this is where it gets funny, because he was killed. Stabbed in the head, turned to stone, left at the bottom of the ocean. There, everybody forgets about my man and goes to look for a whole new Hyrule, where it seems Malladus is a guy. He's a thing. But that's what they got to deal with. Now let's bring it back. When Link was sent back, he goes back to his original time. In his original time, he just prevents all the nastiness in the streets, all the hoodlumry. And he just straight up snitches. He's just like, you know what? I went through some stuff. The things I seen, I can never unsee. So I'm about to warn you, and let's stop him from jump. Where actually they did intervene, grabbed up Ganondorf, and put him to trial, ending up in him having to be executed 100 years later, where the execution ended up being botched. He ends up with the Triforce of power again. Random, like, this time he didn't even go for it. It was actually because Link comes back with his Triforce of Courage, messing up the imbalance and whatnot. So the Triforce is like, whoa, there's 2 Triforce pieces of Courage. 1 piece destroys, and the other 2 get sent out. So Ganon gets the piece of power. And you seen what happened there. He kills a sage, about to go bloody murder on everything again, starts salivating at the mouth. They send him to the Twilight Realm. Years, hundreds of years pass from there. He comes back, like, you know, that's his shtick. It's his thing. He likes being sealed and coming back. And he got killed again. In his human form. He got stabbed in the chest. Which was the coolest Ganondorf death, because my man got stabbed and didn't even drop to a knee to die. He died standing up. You build that casket. But yeah, he dies. Hundreds of years later, another male Gerudo was born, named Ganondorf, and for I don't know why, he ends up with the memories and hatred of the original Ganondorf. And just grows up to do the same thing. But this time he grabs the trident of power. He's like, man, I don't even want to do all this extraness. I'm just going to grab this right here and go straight Ganon on y'all. But this time he was sealed away in the 4 sword. So he wasn't even put in the sacred realm. He's in the sword. Now that he's in the sword, I guess the sword went forgotten, because nobody talks about the elemental sanctuary for nothing. But that's where his story ends in that timeline. Now let's take it all the way back to Ocarina. And again, he has the other fate of where he defeats everybody. And he comes out triumphant. So essentially he beats Link. He takes the Triforce from him. Takes the Triforce of Wisdom from a powerless Zelda. Claims all 3 pieces. And before he goes ham, I'm assuming that the sages or maybe even the Sheik or somebody intervened and did what they could to seal him as best as possible. Now this is why I think Breath of the Wild kind of complicates things here, because in my belief, I think it's a downfall timeline. I'm aware that the game is being said to be at the end of all 3. But in my heart of hearts, I believe it was originally a downfall timeline game. And before Nintendo wanted, I'm just going to take it like Nintendo really wanted to stop the fan wars. Because we're all supposed to love. We're all supposed to have a little Nehru in us. So they came up with, I guess, the scapegoat, quote unquote, saying that it's at the end of all 3 timelines. But back to what I was originally saying, this is where it gets funny, because he was sealed away as Ganon, I'm assuming. So now Ganon always just keeps coming back. In the downfall time, he just keeps coming back. He's like, yo, I don't even care about my body. We just coming back. Now, with that said, in Breath of the Wild, it's hinted at a lot that Ganon stopped caring about his original form and his body. He just was like, you know what? It's easier to just come back in my malice form and just keep wrecking stuff. So the fact that in the sequel trailer it shows his body means at some point his body was sealed away. And if it was sealed away, and in Breath of the Wild said he was always looking for it, but just couldn't find it, was like screw it, or couldn't get to it, he tried to make his own a new body rather, out of malice and whatever remaining Sheikah tech he could corrupt. And that's why you got the Calamity Ganon form in that fight you got in Breath of the Wild. Now, if you ask me, I've heard a theory, don't remember where, let me know in the comments if you remember where. Somebody mentioned the theory where Calamity Ganon himself is also another form of the Blights, the Blight Ganons. Like how you saw Thunder Blight and Fire Blight and Wind Blight and all of them. You've seen them have a corrupted form as well, similar to what Calamity Ganon looked like. He looked like a bunch of malice that tried to piece together technology to form some kind of body. And I believe, yeah, that makes sense. I feel like Calamity Ganon himself was just an acclamation of what he was trying to form himself, because he got a beard. So that means he did try to come back to at least his original form somewhat, since he couldn't find his actual body. But in the sequel trailer, it shows that his body was sealed away. And if you ask me, in the time where he defeated Link after Ocarina of Time but before Link to the Past, I think in that moment of hecticness, the Sheikah did what they could to seal him where he was. I think Ganondorf, which still doesn't make sense, but I'm trying to piece it. Ganondorf was sealed where he was with some kind of Sheikah incantation or some kind of Sheikah technology, because if you see in the trailer, Ganondorf is standing in a position almost like he didn't see it coming. Like he was definitely standing and doing whatever it was that he was about to do, but got caught off guard, grabbed by the chest, and you're sealed. So what I'm assuming is they sealed him, and when they grabbed him, the incantation sealed away the malice form, the evil intent version of him. It sealed away his evil while leaving his body almost like a statue. So he was stuck in place. And as he was stuck in place, the Triforce of Power, he had all three pieces at this point. So the Triforce pieces returned to the Sacred Realm along with his essence form, and that's where he festered into Demon King Ganon. And that's why in that game, A Link to the Past, when you see him, you only see him in the Dark World, because that's where his body is. That's where his malice form is. And that's why he was essentially just a blue pig, and just always coming back as a blue pig, or some kind of variation of a pig-like monster the whole time. Now, if you ask me, wherever his body was stuck, they built a temple around it. They was like, hey king, this is all we could do. This is the best we could do. And I guess just build something around him and build the castle on top of that, and let's forget this guy ever happened. And the king, or the royal family rather, was like, you know what? Alright, this is the best we could do. So we're gonna build right here, which will be the castle from A Link to the Past or the castle for Twilight Princess. But obviously it can't be Twilight Princess, because this happened prior. And the only reason he would only come back to look for his body is so he could physically sit on the throne once he actually won, which he did in Breath of the Wild, or 100 years prior. So we got one timeline where my man is killed, turned to stone, and left at the bottom of the ocean. Another timeline where my man is killed, reborn, and sealed away in the Force Sword. And another timeline where he was just sealed away completely. And I'm assuming that he was sealed away while in his Demon Ganon form, since we're going by the end of Ocarina of Time's last battle. So in all three, it just doesn't make sense, or at least on the surface, it doesn't make sense as to why Ganondorf's body would be present in Breath of the Wild, even if we're assuming that Breath of the Wild takes place at the end of every timeline. So now let's break it down, the most logical one. Now let's say he was at the bottom of the ocean. Well, when we last see him, he has a sword in his head. And that sword, in fact, is the Master Sword. Yet in Breath of the Wild, let's say years, in the 10,000 years, the ocean receded. And somebody had happened to find the stone Ganondorf and pulled the sword. Well, when there would be some kind of story or legend of when this guy got the sword pulled out and came back to life trying to wreak havoc. But there isn't. According to them, the sword has been in the forest. Or according to Breath of the Wild, the sword's been in the forest. And aside from a lot of other things within game proving that it can't be an adult timeline, it seems highly unlikely. So we can scratch that one off the list. And now let's go on to the child timeline. With that being said, at the end of this one, he is sealed away in the forest sword. At the end of he was killed, came back, yada yada, but he's sealed essentially at the end in the forest sword, helping pay rent with Vaati. So if he's there and there's no mention of the forest sword or anything like that in Breath of the Wild, we can scratch off that this would be him. Beside the fact that he was sealed completely in there with his body not being in the outside world at all. Now, I have a theory that I think the temple in the Thundra Plains in Hyrule Ridge, the little swamp area with the little temple in the middle, if you ask me, I think that is the elemental sanctuary or elemental sanctuary. But that's a theory for another day and a whole nother video. So now we move on to the decline time. I like to call it the decline time.
No! No!
But we move on to that one and we see that he was sealed away into the sacred realm. And we don't know if he was sealed away in his human form or in his dark beast form. And if it was the latter, then essentially his body would go with it. Or we can presume his body will go with it. Now, out of all three, this is the decline timeline. Ganondorf would still be the most possible. Due to, hear me out. What if when he was running rampant with all three pieces real quick, he's running through Hyrule, and in a last resort, the Sheikah or the sages have to use this kind of incantation where it's a hand that grabbed him in place. And let's say he was Ganon, Dark Beast Ganon. And at the end of Ocarina of Time, he was bipedal, which means he could have been standing up like a human. And if we look at the trailer for the sequel of Breath of the Wild, you see he was standing up and almost caught off guard, like, kind of leaned back like, whoa. He wasn't sure what was about to happen. So let's say he was in his Demon Ganon form from Ocarina. He's standing up straight with the two swords, and bam, we get him. Grabbed him in the chest. He's grabbed in the chest, and he's, essentially being caught off guard. And what happened was, once this incantation got him, or this technology got him, it started to drain the malice and the power of the Triforce out of him as it sent it into the sacred realm, which would transform his body back into human form. But keeping him in place as the more and more seeped, more and more he turned back into human Ganondorf, and the more and more he became mummified, like as if his whole essence was sucked out of him. See, that would kind of make sense. It would send the malice and all the dark intent and the Triforce back to the sacred realm, where all of that can fester, and he would just be in his demon form there, where he would still use the Triforce to make the dark world and run rampant through there. Now, let's say that did happen. Now we have his body essentially just stuck in place wherever it's standing. So now at this point, whoever did it, whether it was the Sheikah or whether it was the sages, the royal family was like, well, so how are we going to dispose of this? Because if we move him, then all that darkness can easily come back. So whoever it was that sealed him was like, let's just build a temple around this and just essentially bury him from history. Let's not even talk about this guy. My man was running around with rape zombies. Well, I'm not trying to write that in the book. This way we can keep his body separate, in check, and his essence is far away in the sacred realm. Let's just never go to the sacred realm, because all this was just crazy. And if that was the case, then that would make perfect sense to what we saw. Now, what does that mean for the game? Does he come back as Ganondorf? And you fight a whole game with Ganondorf, the evil king himself? Or is he on a quest to absorb all the malice again? Or is he looking for the Triforce? Or does my man still remember what he came here to do? Now, depending on what he comes here to do is also a big factor in which Ganondorf this may be, because this could still be, like they said, this still could be one of the three. But if he essentially comes back looking for the Triforce, then that means he remembers the last thing he did was Ocarina of Time. Or at least Link to the Past, where he had all three and it was taken from him. Does he come back just to kill the hero and the princess? Because if that's the case, then I'm assuming that would be in the adult timeline. That would be Wind Waker, because the last thing he would remember was being thwarted by this guy. He remembers what happened to Ocarina. He came back looking for Zelda in Wind Waker, and when he confronted the hero winds, he was actually disappointed, if you remember. He was like, "What? You? Who are you?" You swing the sword, and he's like, "You not the guy that fought me last time. Yo, he was actually about that life. You're weak. Look at that. I'm a backhand. He backhanded Link. It was like, don't even try it. Take those clothes off. What are you doing?" He was upset that he couldn't rematch with the hero of time. And at the end, he wasn't even here for all that. He was just like, you know what? Well, if I can't get my Triforce, then I'm at least gonna get my revenge. And I guess hero wins. I guess he'll do. So if he's coming just to kill the hero and Zelda, then it could be Ganon from Wind Waker, or at least the adult timeline. Now, if Ganondorf is back just to take over Hyrule and just have domination, then this would be the child timeline rather. The child timeline Ganondorf, as the last thing he would remember would be the chain of events of getting snitched on, tried to be executed, was killed, got his memories put into a reincarnated version of him, and being upset at all the things that's transpired from the past. Yeah, because this one would come back with all the memories of the past and the hatred of what they did to his people. Because then he'd be like, well, hold on. I was born and for some reason had these memories of like somebody snitched on me, tried to put me in jail. Then you guys try to kill me. Then I think I got killed. And now I'm being born in some place called the Desert of Doubt. I feel like the name of this should have been Gerudo Desert, but I feel like we got kicked out of there. And if anybody's going to be gentrifying, it's going to be me. So yeah. If he came back for domination, then it would be that Ganondorf. But I guess we would have to wait and see. From the looks of the trailer, and in my humble opinion, the way he turned his head and looked at Zelda and was upset, it's the same Ganondorf that prevailed at the end of Ocarina of Time. And he's back to do it again. He almost had it. If we go by the events of Breath of the Wild, he almost had it. He destroyed everything. All he needed was a body so he could physically sit in that throne and put dominion over everybody. So if we're going to go by that theme, then it might just be the decline time. But hey, again, it's just a theory. Oh, wait, no. And I'm HMK. No. And this is another Zelda. No. I'm going to come up with my own cool outro, alright? Y'all leave me alone. But either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you click like. I hope you hit subscribe. Honestly, doesn't matter if you do. No, I'm playing. I need this revenue. I need this revenue. But go ahead and do that. More videos coming soon. I told you I got the map in Hyrule coming soon. Like I said, that's where I put every single Zelda map to date and put the comparison and line it up perfectly with the Breath of the Wild map. Hope you stay tuned for that. This is Hyrule Hystorian signing in and signing out. Peace.